Hello and welcome. As you can see, this is some project I've been working on and it didn't seem to really work. So all the splines were somewhere over the place. It's okay that all the empties, you can like change the empties and with it the splines change, but all in all it's a much too complicated setup. So therefore I'm going to delete all of that, and I can delete that, I can delete the targets, and for the sake of simplicity I'm going to put all these empties into a new collection and hide them. So what I want to do is I get all of these vectors from these empties and I want to try to paint a line in between them, which is easy enough, but this spline should behave like a flying path of an airplane. So it has to take off and it has to land and it has to have a certain height above the earth. Alright, let's first get our empties within collection info, I guess. We get our endpoints. So in this collection we have 3 empties and I want to draw a line from all empties to all the other empties. How do I do it? Well, first of all I get all the transform inputs. So every empty, so this one is at 1.40.08 and that should reflect somewhere in here 1.4, 0.08, 1.6. So that's the last empty, and I'm doing that by hitting the W key and open a viewer. So now that we have all the start and end points, I will loop through the list, hitting W, loop through the locations, and I'm also putting a new vector list as an iterator, and I'm going to simply shift my list of empties for 1. So the output here is just shifted to one place in the order, as you can see. Let's create a spline from these points and output that. Alright, with spline object output we can view the lines. I'm going to hide the earth. So we have these 3 curves, and ideally these curves have like a shrink wrap, which we can do. So first of all I'm going to have a spline I'm going to name it as my pre, and this spline has a shrink wrap on it, and it should shrink onto the curve. So what I'm gonna do now is I am instancing this spline, how often times, this often times, and now I'm going to put these objects, when I copy them full, into my loop and output my new spline to this. Okay, what's going on? So we have 3 splines being generated and 3 objects. Okay, from all these empties to all these empties, there should be a line. And all these objects I create have a data path that I can copy. So now I'm copying the data path for the visibility of the modifier. And I'm going to attribute output that for every object, and I'm going to use a boolean to make that happen. So what we see is my splines don't really work, so I will output the splines out of these. So now we have 7 splines coming out, and I'm looping through that. And I'm also getting an object. And we do that all again. And it's not properly working. I don't know what's happening. So what I will do is I loop through the locations and get a vector list. Yeah. So in here comes one vector and every other vector. Now I'm looping through this vector list down here, and for every vector I'm putting out splines. Splines created from points. Come on, connect. Alright, now we have we have 7 splines, and we are going to evaluate this or get an info of the spline. Well, I want the spline length. And whenever the spline length is 0, I'm gonna sort it after this number. So I have these sorted numbers and one of them is always 0. That's because one vector is connected to itself, which is 0, and therefore I can get the indices of my splines, and this list get sliced until the end, but offsetting it by 1, which will result in 6 splines. And these splines are going to be distributed into my objects, and we have to have loads of them now. Right. So these splines the modifier is not working correctly. Alright, let's do it with these. I can delete this loop. So whenever I'm going to copy new empties into my endpoints, it will adjust accordingly. So what we have done again is create one point to every other point, get a spline from them, sort these splines after length, and then skip the first, which is 0. So now let's tackle the other problem of the not being orderly. Okay, I loop through every spline and I don't see it correctly. Okay, I loop through every spline and I get the lengths. Hitting this button will give you an amount slider, and I want to have my first number multiplied by 2. So now I have a spline, and on the spline are for now 8 points, and these points look like this. So this is my spline. Going to tidy up a little. So what I'm gonna do now is, for every of these points, I'm going to project the line until it hits this sphere. Therefore I have to create a BVH tree. Or maybe it's even easier with project point on plane. No, not really. Okay, I want to build an BVH tree from this sphere. I'm gonna pipe it in here. I use it as a parameter. Now we are looping through all of these locations, and again getting the BVH tree in here. What I want to do is a raycast, and this raycast looks like this now. It's staying right in the center. So if we project it in any other direction, it might work. So let's get this direction by direction to rotation. And this rotation again to direction. What we have now is we have a certain vector going into the direction of the first point, which is exactly what we want. I'm outputting this list. Let's see what comes out. I guess not much. Well, that's something. Let's up this. That's probably exactly what I want. Alright. So this raycast casts from every point that I deleted now to the sphere, and out of these points we're going to create our flight path, which we should... I'm going to output this Euler again. And I'm going to use my this vector. Yeah, that will work. That will work. So now I'm going to have a vector mass, and this vector gets put onto our first vectors to have this certain height. And now we're going to mix the vector. Okay, I have to loop through them. So now I want to mix between the upper vectors and the lower vectors. And I'm doing that by a fall off. And this fall off will be evaluated. Fall off, for now I'm choosing a delay. And when we output this vector list, I should get something. How do I do that? I get a fade fall off. Alright, so it's going up. And let's make this bigger so we can see it. And it stays at that height. And I get another fall off. That's we have to get a certain amount. And we have a certain amount, and this fall off will be mixed. And if I now increase the radius, my planes will be above the Earth. Alright. Last thing we have to do is put all of these curves into a new spline. And where does it come out? It comes out here. Alright, we have our flight routes. Yeah. Okay, we're back again. I'm deleting things I don't need. And I'm going to remap this fall off from -1 to 1. Okay, that looks alright. Now let's output these. And again, we have some of them not really working. I'm going to have all the routes have the same material. Well, I have to create one, put it in here. We're putting our old empties into the endpoints again. And we have a lot of flight routes, alright. And I'm going to make public this multiplier around that number. Going to have the multiplier by 10. Alright, let's add some more airports. Something is not right with the last and the first point. I didn't want to, but I guess we'll evaluate this at first point, combine a vector list, and the same goes for the last point. Why is that not working? Something happens in between here. It crashes. Okay, we are back again, and I figured I have a problem with the raycasting, because whenever it doesn't hit, there will be a 0, 0, 0 vector, and therefore I'm going to add an output, the boolean as an output, which tells me if that the ray hits or does not hit. Here we are. So when I show this list, we see that the first one is false, and I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to mask these two lists. So whenever it's false, no rotation and everything else is calculated. I'm going to evaluate the spline again. So each spline on the first point, parameter 0, which looks like this somewhere. I'm going to combine a vector list from the first point to every other point and then to the last point, which is parameter 1. And I'm piping it in. Well, I can pipe it right in here. So now that is what I want for all of the empties. Alright, now that we have all of the splines correctly, I'm going to append a plane to all of these splines. But first of all, I'm going to trim all these splines. I'm using this loop for it. Animate a float over time, which I have to have a float. We add like 0.0, and now all the splines should fly above the surface. Yeah, they do. Let's get a spline model. And we're going to evaluate this spline. I'm going to compose a matrix consisting of location and a rotation. And I'm going to have a vector from value for the scale. So by outputting this matrix, I now have 249 matrices, and these are getting metrics outputted. Where are they? Okay, as we can see, none of these planes are really pointing in the right direction. So we have to juggle around. That looks alright. No, it does not. Why is it not working? Let's do it like this. Okay. So they're doing it all at the same time. And they seem a little wonky at the end. Alright, now make them all do that at different times. Okay, we have a problem here. Multiplying by 1, so they should start earlier. And going to modulo this time. So when the duration is 120, the time should restart at 120. And we have our planes. I divide everything that's coming in here by 10, and that will be for the plane tail. That is the plane size. Alright, I think we are done.